Hello, you. Today on YouTooSpain Live, you and I are going to be asking journalist, author, radio presenter, and former councillor Bill Anderson from Mijas all about what the future holds for expats in Spain. And we'll also talk about his latest book, which is due out fairly soon. So, Bill will be joining me on the virtual settee here by the virtual pool shortly, and I know he's going to have plenty to say that will make you prick up your ears. I can't wait. Stick around and enjoy the show. If you're watching the video back afterwards, you can ask questions in the comments below. First of all, though, gather round, give us a little wave, hit the like button, have your questions ready, or just relax and enjoy the chat. Welcome to YouTooSpain. Let's dance. Right then, just before we get chatting, don't forget to make a note of our website, YouTooSpain.com, which is growing all the time. I've just put up 3 new articles in there, and that's where you can find loads of resources, specialists, and links that you need for your move to Spain and for living here. There is also a free newsletter at the beginning of every month, so sign up for that. Soon as possible. Doesn't cost you a penny to subscribe, nor does it cost you anything to subscribe to this channel on YouTube either. Subscribing just means you're telling YouTube that this is one of your favourite channels and you want to know when new videos are coming out. Finally then, if you use the affiliate links either on the website or in the video description below, it helps YouTooSpain without costing you a cent. You can even get discounts on services too. It's a win-win-win with a cherry on top. There we go. Now, so without further ado, let's meet our excellent guest for today. It's Bill Anderson. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Skatz. Lovely to see you.
And you too. Thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to invite me, and looking forward to this. I shall try to behave myself.
No, you don't have to. I think it'll be much better if you don't. Here we go. Let's just have a say who's on the live chat right now. Hello, good morning, Mike Ripper. He's the first one here. Good morning to you. And Susan McGee and Bev, of course. Good morning, Bev. Bev is our prize winner from last year when Chris was on the show, and she's going to be joining me and Chris for a meal down around somewhere near Chris. We haven't decided on the restaurant yet, but okay. As soon as we have a date, we'll pick one. So Paul Cook as well, good morning to you, and to everyone else who's going to join us today. Thanks for doing that. If you have any questions on social media, there actually weren't any specific questions on social media. It was just hellos. Normally we do those halfway through the show, but we'll just chat. It's going to be much more chat today. Bev's still looking at dates. Dave Brazier, good morning to you. And John McClue, all the best from Ayr. You're moving soon, aren't you, John? That's lovely. There's a lot of Chris's customers on here. You're a friend of Chris at Upsticks, aren't you?
Indeed, Bill? Yeah. We've well, I've often, especially when all the new Brexit stuff, appeared on the scene, people would contact me with all sorts of questions, and to be honest, I'm one of these jack of all trades and master of none. So the number of times I had to contact Chris and say, Chris, help, I don't know what the answer to this is. And he was fantastic.
Yeah, he's learnt very quickly. It was a steep learning curve for everybody. It's not least the people in the consulates in the UK. For them, it's all brand new, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us, first of all, for those of our watchers who've not met you, who you are and what you do.
Well, at the moment, I am happily unemployed. I think they call it holidays, but I always say holidays is when you're not working and you get paid, Well, I moved to Spain. I live just outside in the countryside, just outside La Cala de Mijas, a little bit further down the coast than you are, And I moved here in 2002. My background in the UK was in psychological services. My late wife and I were both psychologists. We both had our own businesses, and we bought a little apartment in the 1990s in La Cala, just really for us for holidays. And her health, she was having some health problems, and when you're running your own businesses, you're working 60, 70 hours a week, 7 days a week. You can't really work 9 to 5. And we were very clear that we needed to make some changes in lifestyle, and sort of winding down your work is very, very difficult, because the whole nature of business is you have to keep it going and ramping it up. So we made the big decision that let's just leave it all behind and start all over again. So 2002 we moved out here, when life was a lot simpler to move to Spain,
and property was a lot cheaper as well.
Property was a lot cheaper, absolutely. So I retrained as an English teacher. My background was in languages, and that was where the whole thing started down here. I ended up, I have a degree in German as well, so I ended up in a very strange situation at a hotel school that we have here in La Cala, being a Scotsman teaching German to Spaniards.
Brilliant.
It was a challenge, but it was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I moved on to teaching at a private university, La Roche University in Marbella, teaching English, intensive English, and also business communication. And then I got roped into the political world, kind of with one arm up my back, because as well as my businesses in the UK, I worked a lot with politicians. I was an advisor to the Scottish Parliament. I had a lot of contact with politicians, realized very early on that politics is a fundamentally dishonest business. And when you decide never to do something is when it kind of comes up and bites you on the backside, and you end up in it.
Well, is it just because you were outspoken and you challenged people in it?
Well, yeah. It's just I'm not particularly outspoken, to be honest. I try to be honest, and that makes you outspoken sometimes.
Yeah, when you're talking to politicians, definitely.
Yeah, and it's the old saying about when how do you know a politician's lying? Because their lips are moving. and it's not necessarily what they say that's the problem. It's usually what they don't say. And anyway, I got a seat in 2019. Spent the last 4 years as a local councillor. But you've got a comment there. Free Alba.
Free Alba. What's that all about? Tell us.
Well, Alba is the Gaelic name for Scotland. So I guess we've got somebody who wants a bit more independence for Scotland there. Yeah, I just did my work as a councillor the only way I knew, which was really listening to people and meeting people. And my big problem was that I was never really much of a party person,
Not as in party, but
not as in any, actually. I'm not even a party person. I've never belonged to a political party before, and I appreciated. I was with the Partido Popular. I appreciated the fact that they included me on their list. Why? Because it was the only party presenting in 2019 that had a foreigner on their list. So I've got to give them credit for that. But I couldn't get into all the religion that politics is, and I struggled a little bit with that. Anyway, I was represented in 2023, but I was much lower down the list, didn't get my seat, and actually it was a bit of a relief. So that's where I am right now. I had leave of absence from the university, and I'm waiting to hear about restarting. So I decided to use my time as effectively as I could, and done a bit more writing. As you say, I have a radio show which I've been doing for, I don't know, 2.5 years. It's a online station based in France called Expat Radio. And I got involved with that. I'm not sure how I got involved with that. I got a phone call, sort of random phone call, saying, "Would you like to do a show?" And I go, "Why not?"
Yeah.
So it's mainly local people, but people from other parts of Spain as well who moved out here. Whether you call them expats, immigrants, I think to me it doesn't really matter, you know.
I've had many arguments about that.
I'm sure you have, and you know, it's like, why can't we be both?
My argument was, there was a video called "Expat or Immigrant." You're all immigrants. I think
Yeah,
if we call ourselves, because it's not the definition of the word, it's the perception of,
absolutely.
and especially the perception of white middle class Westerners who see
Yeah,
themselves as expats because expats are okay, whereas immigrants, ooh, no,
yeah.
that's the general thing, and it can be quite racist too.
I agree with you. So that people can call me what they want. Anyway, I'm with Expat Radio, which actually goes out. Usually we reach about I don't know, 85 countries on the show. And we have about between 80 and 90,000 listeners. And you know, very often I'm just interviewing people that live here. John says we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. Indeed we are. You know, it's just people who live here, people who've moved out, and we talk about the challenges and setting up businesses and, you know, dealing with bureaucracy and all the kind of things that I'm sure you've done over the years as well, Skatz, with people. And I do that because I enjoy it. I do columns fairly regularly for a couple of newspapers. We were doing live streams. We've stopped for the summer, mainly local live streams to try and give people local information. Yeah, I do some writing, and I don't know. Life is good.
Lots of people come out here and retire. It sounds like you're never going to retire.
Yeah, I don't. It depends what retire means, you know. If retire means sort of sitting in a rocking chair, watching, I don't know, EastEnders, no, I'm never going to retire. I don't actually have TV here, so.
Well done. That's a good idea.
But yeah, I think if I just stopped doing the things I like doing, I think I would just kind of shrivel up and die, you know.
I did say to my wife, I'm never going to. I can't see myself stopping working because what I do, I'm a musician. You know, I can't. Putting down the guitar and stopping singing, that's retirement for me, and
Yeah.
that's I can't see myself ever doing that. That's kept me alive. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just seen that Bev has said, can we get the radio show in England? Yeah, you can get it anywhere, Bev. It's an online show. It's expatmedia.onl, and you can tune into it. Well, it's basically on 24 hours a day. My show is Friday from 1 till 2. It goes out live. So we get all the all the benefits and privileges of doing things live, and you know all about that, Skatz.
Yeah, absolutely.
The things that don't work, whether it's here or there or whatever, and it's always a bit of a challenge. Like, is everything going to be okay today?
Yeah, that's part of the energy that keeps it going, isn't it? The excitement.
Indeed.
We had a technical issue before with my mouse. We had mouse problems before we came on today, and fortunately you had the right idea. Turn it off and turn it back on again, and it all worked. So
It's amazing how often that works, actually, Skatz. It's
Yeah, I was slightly starting to panic. It was all right at 9:25. You know, I was thinking, yeah, we've not quite got sound, and things are a bit jittery. But when it gets to 5 to 10, and then
Indeed.
you have to. By the way, send me the link to the radio show after this, and I'll put it in the comments below so that everybody can find it.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Let's turn into political pundits for a moment. I know you're not, and you're out of the politics game. But what do you think the recent election results mean? I had this question ready before the election results came through, and they weren't quite as bad as everyone was expecting. But there has been a swing to the right and even the far right in local politics. Is that translating to the way that it feels here, to the way that Spanish people feel about outsiders?
I think it's probably more complex than that. I think, I mean, to be honest, when I first came out here, we were doing some building work on the house, and I got really friendly with the guy that was organising the building work.
Mm.
And I think local elections were coming up, and I knew nothing about local elections, even registering or anything, because you have to remember back in 2002 we didn't even have internet in the house. So you know, we were I was a bit ignorant, and I said to him, I said, Juan, I don't know, I don't understand Spanish politics. I'm really quite ignorant about it all, so I don't think I'll be taking part in the local elections.
Mm.
He said, nobody understands Spanish politics, but we vote anyway.
Excellent.
I don't know. I think that if you look at the history of Spain, there have always been these swings backward and forward. I mean, I think the socialists have been in national government, you know, more overall in the 40 odd years.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and again, you get the swing towards the right, and you know, the Partido Popular is, I think, very much like the Conservative Party. I would call it centre right. You know.
Yeah.
Rather than right wing, as it's sometimes described. What is, well, actually, Vox are probably going to do okay out of this, but they actually lost a lot of seats.
You did, yeah.
You know, I don't see that. I think the move to the PP is more of this natural back and forward swing between the sort of centre left, centre right, rather than a statement. I think what concerns me more, and I maybe can't back this up, is it seems that a number of local authorities now are PP are pacting with Vox. For me, that's a little bit more concerning, because you know, however you look at it, and people might love Vox or hate them, I do see some of their ideas as being quite radical.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wouldn't like to see is a move towards, you know, PP will always be with Vox and see them as one single body, you know, because they're a bit of an unknown quantity, and you know, I have heard things anecdotally. That, for example, in some areas where they've been in power in local authorities, that they've wanted to close down, for example, foreigners departments, because the foreigners need to learn Spanish, and we shouldn't be spending more money on the foreign community unless they pay extra taxes to get this extra service. And I don't know. It's anecdotal. I haven't had personal experience of it. But it would concern me a little bit if you know, PP were depending on Vox to get into power, and I say into power as opposed to into government, because it's the way I see politics. It's not about being in government; it's about being in power.
Yes, having the influence there, because they're never going to be hopefully never going to be the, you know, more than 50% of the vote, and that doesn't happen really in countries where there's sort of proportional representation like this. Yeah.
But anyway, I don't follow it awfully closely. You know, my colleagues when I was a councillor found it really strange that I didn't get excited about, I don't know, regional elections or national elections. And I said, well, I can't get excited about them because I can't contribute to them. I can't vote in them. You know, we can only vote in local elections. And, you know, I'm saying, well, look, I get what the Spaniards vote for. So it's like I would rather just step back and let the Spaniards decide, rather than, you know, getting excited about who's going to win this and who's going to win that. So I don't follow. I don't follow the you know, what's happening nationally that closely. I kind of catch up from time to time with it. But I don't know. I think it could be heading for another general election towards the end of the year.
That's what the papers seem to think. It's just so evenly balanced at the
It
moment.
is,
So
yeah.
I mean, the left wing party that's in caretaker power at the moment, that was in power before the elections, didn't really lose any votes either, did they? They're just
No,
about the same as before. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much so. Pretty
So
much
it's
so.
not as if support has fallen off for them, and they've actually done a really good job. They've kept everything going during COVID. And they saved the country through knocking 20 cents off fuel for everybody,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was that. I think that was the genius plan.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Can I mention John has said so? I expect expats are never going to be treated as equals. I think this is an interesting question, actually, John.
Yeah.
I was speaking at the Costa Press Club. I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago. I can't remember exactly when. And there were a number of people there who have become nationalized Spaniards. People who speak perfect Spanish, that they've been in the media and the press for a number of years. Some of them very well known. And we were talking about this. What is our status in Spain? And I asked them specifically. I said, "Okay, you're now Spanish. Are you treated differently? Are you seen differently?" And without exception, they said, "No, we're just Gearys with Spanish passports."
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure what what that means for us exactly. I think in many ways we are treated equally.
Hmm.
I'm not really aware of I don't know, for want of a better term, racism for being a foreigner here. I'm not aware of that at all. But there is a kind of, and I don't want to press it too hard, but a kind of institutional racism in Spain, and it's not just against Brits. It doesn't matter how highly qualified you are, getting into anything that is the sort of authorities, whether it be in schools or the police or whatever. Technically, we could apply to get into these things. The reality of getting into them is just about, for most of us, impossible. Even getting your degrees convalidated over here is a nightmare. And then you have to do opposiciones, which means that you're competing against native Spaniards for the same posts. And so it's not that we couldn't be fully integrated, but the system makes it in reality very difficult for us to be just part of the the whole scene. You're not likely to see, as you see in the UK, when you go into an airport and go through customs, and you've got a Sikh with a turban there as one of the customs officers. That's a much more difficult thing to imagine in Spain. And I don't think it's racism per se, but the system protects certain areas of Spanish life, I think, for Spaniards. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it does mean that we are limited in the way that we can integrate. I mean, my Spanish is, I would give it, I don't know, 8 out of 10 probably. It's pretty reasonable. But there are things I couldn't do that a Spaniard has open to them. And it's one of the things I think you have to just accept when you move to Spain. It's the way it is. And as I say, I don't think it's racism with a capital R, but it is a kind of protectionism for certain areas of Spanish life that make it really only available easily to Spaniards.
Very well said. Do you think attitudes have changed towards expats in the time that you've been here?
I don't know if I can answer that, Skatz, because the area that I moved to is quite different from, for example, where you are. In Mijas, we have there's about 90,000 population roughly, and around 30,000 of that number are foreigners. So we have this is Mijas is the council area in Spain with the second largest number of Brits, for example, in Spain. I think it's in can't remember exactly, Denia or somewhere in that area that has a higher percentage of Brits living there. So Mijas has been very accepting of having a third of the population foreigners. And that number's probably grown in the 20 years that I've been here, but I don't really see any change. I've never felt discriminated against in any way because I'm a foreigner, because we bring a lot of money, as John says, into the area. And we tend to, in some ways, leave the Spaniards alone because people set up their own businesses. They set up bars. They set up, I don't know, plumbing businesses or window cleaning businesses, and they kind of, live in their own bubble in many ways. I don't know if there are changes in more rural areas. Where perhaps the percentage of foreigners is increasing, and maybe it's changing, not just the demographics of that area, but changing the feel of very traditional places. I couldn't really say if that's the case or not.
Well, here in Computer we have 50-50 foreigners to Spanish, and a lot of the Spanish live in the centre, in the pueblo, although there are foreigners living there as well, and a lot of it outside in the campo. There are a lot of enclaves which are heavily immigrant expat, and I presume that's changed a lot in the last 30 years from when people started moving here into the villages, people who wanted to integrate into the Spanish way of life. But it's definitely more, and of course Computer's a bit touristy, and it's also, but it's attracted lots and lots of artists, which I think these kind of white mountain villages do attract when they're very beautiful. You get photographers and painters who just want to take the area on.
Absolutely. And you have to ask the question. I mean, it'd been lovely to see the graph of how the foreign population in a place like Computer has actually gone up in the last 50 years, let's just say. It would be interesting to see how that number and that proportion of foreigners has actually developed. But you've got to then ask the question: if that hadn't happened, what would these places be like now?
I wonder, would they still be going? Because it's notable on the streets in the festivals that there are young people, but after school age, there's a big drop-off.
Right.
There's not the work really for anybody of that age, just apart from you can work in a garage, you can work in a shop, but there are only as many of them as can support the population in a place of 3,000 population in general. So they move to the cities and go to universities.
Yeah, and I spent 6 months. I had a period where work kind of dried up for me down here, and I had a period of 6 months that I was working inland in a small town, about 25,000 people, called Baena. It's in the Cordoba province. And I did work in the high school. I did work in an academy, and it was amazing how many of the young people there just wanted to get out. We were talking about then 16, 17-year-olds, and it was like, I want to get out. I want to get down to the coast. I think they felt in a nice little town, don't get me wrong, but I think they just felt, I don't know, stifled. I felt that they seemed to feel that there just weren't the opportunities. There weren't there wasn't the excitement in these sort of inland places that they were looking for in life, and the exposure probably to to different people, to different experiences, and they were itching to get out of this place. And I would guess, although Compita isn't quite as far inland as that, but I guess the mentality of a lot of young people is probably quite similar.
It is, yeah. Very little for them to do. My family actually is my surname Scattergood, a real name that doesn't often get said on this show, but I think it means that we scatter. And I looked back at ancestry.co.uk and my family each one of them moves to a different place, and it started off with moves from farming communities to bigger communities and then to bigger cities in the Industrial Revolution. And every one of us, at least, once a generation, have moved on to a different place. And I think
so. You have sown your seed widely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've lived in 3 different countries now. I mean, admittedly, it was only Ireland. I shouldn't say only Ireland. It is a different country, but it's very well connected with the UK. But moving here was a different kettle of fish altogether, really. But we do like to move on. We do like to scatter around.
Indeed.
Yeah, Kev the Argonaut has a good question there. I'll put it up on screen. Good morning, all. Can I have your view, please? How would a mixed race couple, white bloke, brown missus, be perceived in Murcia/Almeria? Well, let's just say in Spain in general, in your perspective.
If I don't know Murcia Almeria personally, but if you take it from here, where I am, people wouldn't look twice. We have friends, quite close friends, who are that situation, white bloke, brown missus, I don't think people look twice at it, to be honest.
Yeah. In Compita, we have gay couples, one white and one brown.
Right.
And we've had a Pride day here as well. It all seems to be, whether it's accepted or whether it's just fine. You get on with what you're doing. It's.
To be honest, Skatz, I'm making this up. I can't back it up in any way. I think that there may be more reaction if it was a Spanish couple. Places, maybe they would see that as being a bit strange. But I think for foreigners in that situation, I personally can't see that anybody would look twice at it. I think they would just see it. Well, after all, they're foreigners,
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Yes.
Yeah.
I did hear somebody say that Spain doesn't seem to be very racist in that way. There's a very cosmopolitan community, and especially up here in the mountains where we've got artists and expressive people wearing colourful clothes like me. I'm looking very plain today, but normally I've got multicolours, and I don't get stared at or anything like that.
No. Well, you might do, but not for that reason, Skatz.
No. Yeah, many other reasons. Yeah. I've always got away with things because I've been a musician, and in Ireland you could think that there might be some sort of hatred towards the English for 800 years of oppression, but being a musician, I got to know even the sort of the hardline people who still have something against the English. I was allowed to stand up in Irish pubs and sing Irish songs, even the rebel songs about hating the English, and that was perfectly acceptable. And I think that the same would be true in Spain if I learnt some Spanish songs that were hardline, for any reason. I think I'd be accepted.
Yeah, I think from a Spanish perspective, they would probably find it a bit amusing, but you see, as I say, there is I would say, rather than racism, there's protectionism in Spain, which makes it difficult for us to fully integrate. But I personally have never experienced what I would call racism here. I probably wouldn't still be here if I felt that was the case.
Yeah, good to hear. Kev the Argonaut says, "Good to hear. She's amazing, and I don't really want to leave her in the UK." No, don't do that. No, you'd probably be in more trouble if you did that. That's far worse than racism. So, do you think then, as the demographic changed? I mean, this is a Brexit question, really. It's all about. Sorry to mention the word, but
the B word.
is it a different class of people, a different level of wealth that people need? Are they more informed? What's happening?
I don't know. I think I think both of these are true. Different class of people, different level of wealth, could well be true post-Brexit. Now, the reason I'm saying for that is, I have met in my years here a lot of young families who have just said, stuff it, we're going to move to Spain. And they basically just packed up and moved to Spain and brought the kids over and put them into local schools and things like that. And maybe the I don't know, they've got a small plumbing business and they just set it up and they get going. Some of them made it and some of them didn't. For some, it was a good move, and for others, it didn't work out because they found getting work and things and paying the bills was not as easy as they thought. Now, what I'm seeing is I think that there are going to be fewer of these kind of moves. Because, how many, especially, okay, with the digital nomad, let's not get in too much to that, but, there's very few young families that can afford to come over here on a non-lucrative visa, have the passive income that they need to do that, and not be able to work for 5 years. I think that's been a really difficult, very difficult for young people to do that. So I think what we are going to see in general is that, it's retired people or people who can afford to retire, whether they're 65, 67, or that doesn't really matter, but people who can afford to retire, have the passive income to do it, that automatically puts them into a different sociocultural position, and I think that in general it's going to be more older people coming over because they're the ones that can afford it.
It's interesting. It might have quite an impact on the age of the population in general, really.
Equally, I have been aware of more elderly people just in the last, 6 months or a year here making the decision to go back to the UK. Some of them have been here 15, 20 years. And they've decided the time has come. Maybe the husband or the wife has died and they're feeling themselves a bit isolated, cut off from the family. Their health is going down. They haven't learned Spanish. They struggle when they go to the doctors. So for all sorts of reasons, I've seen a number of elderly people making the decision just in the last, say, months to go back to the UK. They can get access to National Health Service. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But they're nearer to the family. They've got support. They've probably still kept in contact with friends over there. So I think there's going to be lots of changes or implications of an aging foreign population in Spain as well.
That's interesting. I think there's the fear that if you end up moving into an old people's home over here, that you'll lose your Spanish. This is one of the fears I have. That because it's something I've learned in later life and I regress back to childhood, will I lose all of my Spanish and therefore not be able to communicate at all? And if I get Alzheimer's, then I'll just forget everything and not be able to speak, and it'll feel very weird, as if Alzheimer's doesn't feel weird anyway.
But it's the whole sort of elderly care here in Spain is a very difficult situation because there are not many municipal care homes around. Been talking about it in MICAS for a long time, but we still don't have one. That means private care homes, and some of these are very expensive. I'm probably making this number up, but I think I've heard it. Around 1,200 to 2,000 a week can be, depending on the level of care that people need. Very expensive. And I guess even if people have to sell up their property and things like that, I don't know, especially if it's something like Alzheimer's. People can live for years with Alzheimer's. Can they afford to do that here? I don't know. It's a very difficult one.
It is, yeah. Something that I'm sure I'm going to be doing shows all about that. We've got one coming up next week all about inheritance and wills.
Whoa,
so
yeah.
that's all linked to. Let me just answer Nellie's question. We'll come to Stan's question in a moment. Did we confirm the pension questions? Are the expats getting pension increases each year? Yes. That is confirmed. Yes, it was said by a few people in the live chat that no, once you're over here, once you've got your pension, you don't get the increases as they're announced in the UK, for example. But you do. Yes, it's been confirmed by pension experts.
Can't wait to get a pension.
Absolutely, yeah. And okay, Stan's question. We're back to the racism question. He's been told is that there's a serious element of prejudice, racism towards people of colour, particularly those from the African continent, the USA and the UK. Thoughts on that? I mean, I've noticed a lot of the people that you see from the African continent, certainly down on the coast, are the ones selling trinkets, and I think there's a certain amount of animosity towards them anyway, because they're trying to sell you something and get something off you. So, but apart from that, I don't know.
I think it depends. What I've noticed recently is that I don't know whether I don't know what you call people these days, people of color or people from Africa or whatever. There can be there are certain attitudes. I don't know if it's I don't know if can we call people black people, as opposed to, if we say African, they could be Moroccan and they're not really black or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. But
I've noticed in recent years that there are more of I would say black Africans over here who are not, and I don't mean this in a bad way, looky men, which is what they tend to call them down here. But actually now have got visas, permits, and they're working in restaurants, they're working in various places. So I probably have seen some shift there. I think the Spaniards in general don't bother with them. There seems to be more of an attitude, and this is probably historical, towards Moroccans than to actually black Africans, if I can call them that, or dark brown Africans. There is, we're all Guiris, and some people use that and not really mean anything bad by it. Others maybe mean it in a little bit of a put down way. But when they refer to Moros, it's never really referred to in a good way. Los Moros is never a positive thing. Those Guiris might be, that might be okay, but there is, I think, I don't know whether it translates into prejudice, but there certainly can be attitudes towards Moroccans, and I don't know if that goes back, centuries. A bit like Scotsmen growing up learning Jacobite songs and hating the English, I don't know if that's something that's sort of ingrained, culturally as they're growing up, that we don't like the Moors, which translates.
Yeah, it could be. Well, let's face it, the country was run by the Moors until the Christians came in and just took it all back by force.
800 years the Moors were here, and the Moors actually were very, how shall I say, easygoing with different cultures and different faiths. The Moors brought enormous things to Spain, but it was when the Christians came back that that all changed. It was get the Moors out, get the Jews out, make everyone eat pork so that we know that they've converted.
Yeah.
My understanding of the Moorish period, that it was very liberal in terms of different cultures and different faiths. As I say, it was when the Reconquest came that all that began to change again. But I just wonder if some of these attitudes towards, the Moors, because they still call them the Moros, and they're referring to Moroccans, is a cultural thing that people don't really even think about. Maybe.
Yeah. It's a difficult subject to talk about, and one I don't feel qualified really to talk about. I think black people can realise what the racism is towards them, and on a day-to-day basis, which happens in the UK. I know that from black friends I've got. So,
Sure.
and always makes it difficult to talk about.
I feel exactly the same, Skatz. It's very hard for me as a white male to say whether or not people from the African continent are, if there is prejudice towards them. I think it's a very hard thing to say. The only thing that I can say personally is that, even the guys that come over, mainly from Senegal, on an annual basis, and they're selling things around the streets. I see, certainly from the Brit community, I don't know, a lot of warmth towards them. A lot of them know each other by their first names. You see people, if they're having a quiet day, you see people slipping them €5, and some of them have their families over here, some are supporting families back there.
The restaurant owners are really quite good towards them, and they'll let them come in and sit and have a drink and chat with them. And,
absolutely, yeah. So it's very hard for me, as I say, as a white middle class male, to say whether these people feel prejudice against or not. I think it is difficult.
Yeah, we have Simon saxophone. I hope that's your real name, Simon. Is the term Geary meant to be offensive? Something like grockle, maybe. Is that a Scottish one?
Grockle, I don't know that word. It's a good one. No. Sort of conjures up images, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The term Geary apparently comes from, I think, the Basque Country, and it was all to do with the Catalan Carlist Wars. And originally, it was, I can't even speak Euskera. I can't even pronounce it. But it was a kind of, mixture of some word from Euskera relating to one of the sides in the Carlist Wars. My wife is Spanish. She grew up in Madrid. And, whatever the origins of the word were, she said that growing up in Madrid, when they used the word Geary, it was a kind of exotic thing, because the Gearys were the people that came over, whether as tourists or as immigrants to Madrid, and they were usually a bit better off. And she said that growing up with the word Geary, it had a kind of exotic feel to it. The Gearys were a bit exotic. Now, whether that's changed, and I guess it's like any word, it depends how you use it and what context is that you use it. If somebody says, los Gearys, that's not clearly a compliment. But if someone is saying, hay muchos Gearys aquí, isn't necessarily meant in an offensive way. So I think it's like a lot of the way that we use words, and if we choose to be offended by it or not,
Yeah, it's all in the way they express it, isn't it?
If
it's done with a smile, then that's fine. Now, we've got to. Normally, I do the halfway point in the show, round about half an hour, but we've chatted on, and I don't want the show to be too long today, but not because it's not fun, because this has been fantastic, and I'm having loads of fun today, but because it's my anniversary today, and I've got a meal booked for on the coast.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's actually not the official day we got married. We did a hand fasting ceremony the week after, which is kind of a pagan thing that we got off the internet, and we got all our friends together and did one of these ceremonies, and it's a wonderful thing. We actually persuaded a friend of ours who's completely against marriage. He never wanted to get married. He doesn't like the institution at all. But when he heard the vows that we said to each other, they're a lot more honest. It's things like, will you hurt them? Will you cause offence to them? Will they be really, really peed off with you at some point? And you go, yes. You go, but will you mean it? And you go, well, no, not really, and he said, yeah, actually I could get on board with that. And also, it's a ceremony that you have to do again after a year and a day to say, how's it going? Is it okay? Do you want to carry on doing it, or do you want to just annul it? And that's how it used to be done.
Right. Yeah.
And it took us about 10 years. We did the year and a half ceremony about 10 years later when we were in Ireland, and it was just another beautiful ceremony. It's like redoing your vows again. But anyway, this is the one we actually celebrate this more than the registry office one, which was last week.
Oh, right.
So anyway, that's what's going on today. So anyway, so before we move on with more questions, let's have a quick message from me and my 3 alter egos. Most of our watchers are used to this by now. It's the same one. I'm going to make a new one soon, actually, just to keep you going. Sure. And so here we go. Then we will see you momentarily. Where is it? It's in here. There it is. Are you getting something helpful from this show? Are you enjoying YouTooSpain? Then click on the thumbs up and subscribe to YouTooSpain while you're here. And click on the bell for notifications. It's all free, but it's worth loads of money. I need coffee to keep my picker up. You can donate coffee to us all. There's a link in the video description below, or use the QR code. It'll be in the top left-hand corner of the screen after this message, sweetie. But that's not all. You can support YouTooSpain with a regular monthly amount. It's only a few quid. Oh, he's worth a lot more than that. There's a link below to Patreon, where you can find out what extra groovy things you get by helping out. Oh, I'm all a quiver. One more thing. Get on with it. There's an important guest twiddling their thumbs. All right, calm down. The lovely video watcher needs this. Go on then. There are lots of other links to vital things below. Like what? Well, do you need private healthcare insurance? Yes. Do you need a visa or residency? Do you need to exchange currency? What about finding a property? Or getting tax and pensions advice? Or getting a Spanish mortgage? Or getting documents translated and apostilled? Or getting a medical certificate? Or finding a lovely little app for learning Spanish? Do you need the best mobile phone provider? Or a digital business card so you never need paper ones again? Or do you just want one of YouTooSpain's t-shirts with a slogan on it? You can even get discounts on dental treatments and get a lovely little smile like Skatz. All of those links are there, down below. If you can't find them, ask me in the comments. Is that everything, darling? I need to get my nails done. Probably not, but let's get back to the show, shall we? Back to Skatz in the studio. I wanted to say that. Oh, stop being beastly, you two. YouTooSpain. Over to you, Skatz. Thank you very much, Skatz. And thank you to Walter, Tommy, and my favourite, Dick. Because everybody likes a bit of Dick, darling.
I have no comment on that one.
I thought I brought him in to be just like a 1970s character from a sitcom, just terribly throwback, and everybody loves him. I've taken Tommy. He's the one from the Cockney. It's as good a Cockney accent as I can do. He's the one that's caused more offence than any of them, just probably to Cockneys, or to Brexiteers who think it's a dig at them being thick, basically. But
of course it's not.
No, not at all. No.
Only if people choose to take offence at it.
Absolutely, yes. That's what offence is all about, isn't it? It is a choice. But anyway, that's not the subject of today's show. We could chat about that for hours as well. Do you have any top tips for people moving here, or for people who've already moved? Anything like that? Any tips?
Well, I think for people moving here, even if they can afford it, I think do things in the right order. Come over here, spend the time that you can spend, rent somewhere, rather than just saying, I'm going to buy a house and move to Spain. I think people need to be a bit more, I think, circumspect about making a move like this, especially now that we're out of the European Union. Because, you have to stop being a holiday maker when you move out here at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to stop at some point spending your day just, drinking in bars, eating in restaurants. And because that's what people do on holiday. And, there does come a point where that has to stop. And I think people need to test and try before they buy, to see if, fine for a fortnight or for a month, but what about for 3 months? How does it feel in 3 months? How does it feel in winter? When, the place is much quieter, when a lot of places are closed, how does it feel then? I think people need to be a bit more circumspect before they just, decide, that's all, let's sell up and move to Spain, even if they can afford it. Learn Spanish.
Absolutely, yeah. That's my number one on lots of my tips videos.
Yeah, but it's honestly difficult down here, because so my wife, well, she grew up in Australia, so she is completely bilingual. But she's Spanish. She was born in Madrid. When they came back from Australia, they moved back to Madrid. They moved inland to Jaén province before she eventually came down here to the coast. And she gets really annoyed sometimes when people stop us in the street and speak in really bad English to us. She replies in perfect Castellano, and then they insist on keeping speaking bad English to her.
Brilliant.
So it is difficult sometimes for people to, unless they're persistent with the Spanish, it can be difficult for people to be in an environment, because very often people stick to their nationality, the colonies of their nationality. The Norwegians speak with Norwegians, the Germans meet with Germans, the Brits speak with Brits, and so on. So it can be a challenge to actually, maybe inland, even in Compita, there are more opportunities for people, or more necessities for people to speak Spanish. Probably fewer English speakers amongst the Spanish natives. But here on the coast, it can be challenging. And in fairness, some people make a lot of effort. But, they come out here when they're in their 60s and they've never learned a foreign language before. And it is challenging unless you are almost fanatical about it. You've got to become almost obsessed with learning the language, I think, to be able to do it to a level that you can actually use it and feel comfortable with it.
Absolutely. We found that as a couple, Liz and I, we decided, I think, early on that at least one of us had to take it really, really seriously. And her work is that she gets a lot of English clients and she doesn't have the opportunity to do it. And she was too busy. She was the first one that was going to be able to start to earn as a living. So it was on my back to learn. And also I'm slightly better at learning languages than she is. So it made sense. And now I'm the first person that the one of the local Spanish teachers, and I've actually created my own phrase book and done it. She keeps telling all of the students as they progress, write them down in lists of words that you use in your everyday life that you'll be using over and over again, and things that relate to your life, and so that when you get into a chat with people, you'll be able to you'll be able to have those words at your fingertips, if you like. And so I'm proud to say I'm the first person to ever do that. It's a difficult thing to do, to get somebody as I'll call myself anally retentive, to actually get this book right and index it. This is my index piece of paper, and it's So, I mean, I can testify to the fact that it is tricky to keep it going.
Yeah.
I've knocked my lessons on the head for the summer because I'm just so busy with gigs. But
Yeah. Well,
it
I always did that. I've studied a number of languages, and that was always my way of doing it.
mm,
Was a notebook to write down different types of phrases for different types of situations.
mm,
They call it functional language. So you got all the stuff that might be useful. I don't know, if you go into the pharmacy, all the stuff that might be useful for a pharmacy
mm,
goes onto the pharmacy page. Or if
hmm
you're a plumber, all the stuff that's necessary for a plumber goes on the plumber's page.
that's it.
And I did that for many years. I studied Russian for 6 years. I have a degree in German. I studied Greek. I studied Persian,
Hmm.
and that was always my way of doing it.
There we go. Question from John again. It says question for Ben, but he means Bill. Do you speak Scots in your household or Spanish?
Well, I speak Scots. Vicky speaks English,
Mm,
but we usually speak English at home,
mm,
because Vicky moved to Australia when she was 8, and came back to Spain when she was 17. So these are the very formative years, and she generally prefers just to speak in English.
mhm,
But there are other times when we speak Spanish. If I don't know, if she's telling me something that she's read in Spanish, she'll very often relate it to me in Spanish.
mhm.
When we're out and about, we very often speak Spanish because nobody understands us.
Mm.
But yeah, generally we speak English at home.
Mhm. Let's talk about your book. We've not got to your book yet, and I'm really excited about this. This is your fifth book, isn't it?
Yeah, this is my 6th book actually.
Sixth. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I published a couple of novels, which they're actually supposed to be part of a trilogy, and I haven't written or finished rather the third book in that. It's a kind of lengthy one, and I haven't had time to complete that. It's about half written. In the meantime, I wrote a couple of books of reflections of my time in the local political world, called the Diary of a Councillor in Opposition.
Hmm.
It's just really my reflections on what it's like being on the inside of Spanish politics.
Hmm.
Um, when I didn't discovered I was going to be unemployed, it was actually Vicky who said, "Look, you've got so many stories to tell. You need to do a novel about a kind of satire on Spanish politics."
Hmm.
And
Can I just say? Can I just say what you said on your Facebook page? I've got
yeah,
this quote. You put, "It's a political satire, but comes with a warning. If you're of a delicate disposition, are easily offended, or are overly politically correct, this book will most certainly cause offence. Best not to read it." And that's
yeah,
guaranteed to make people read it.
yeah. I mean, I'm having a dig at everybody.
Mm,
Um, and there are some nice characters in the book, and there's some real clowns. And it's not just as people have said, "Oh, is this about Mijas?" And actually, said, well, no, it's not, because I've never worked as a politician before, but I spent a long time within the political world in the UK.
mm,
As an advisor, I worked with a lot of local authorities. I came across a lot of politicians, ministers. So it's a real mixture of our experience, of my experiences in the political world. And none of the characters are individuals that I know here, for example. All of the characters are composite. You know,
mhm,
there's a bit of this person in here and a bit of that person in there. So
mhm,
they're all composite characters, sometimes with the best parts of 2 or 3 people and sometimes with the worst parts of 2 or 3 people.
mhm.
But basically everybody gets a dig somewhere.
Brilliant. Do
And
have a lot of people recognise themselves and say, "That's me there"?
well, not many people have read it yet. I'm just at the proofreading stage
Uh-huh,
at the moment. So the book's finished. It's had 2 proofreads. Probably got 1 more to go.
uh-huh.
But the people who have done the proofreading are saying, "I think that is," and I'm going, "No, no, 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 no. It's all fictitious." And I've also said in the warning that if people think that this is having a dig at them, all I can say is, if the cap fits, wear it.
Yeah. It's always a good. That's always a good answer.
Yeah, but it's been fun writing. It's been a bit therapeutic, sort of getting out of it. It's set, and I don't know whether I can say some of these words on your show, Skatz, but it's set in an imaginary little white village, sort of surrounded by mountains, on the coast, and it's called Calapeni, which basically means penis cove.
Nice. That word's fine as long as you don't use the vulgar version.
So and it's because they have this kind of natural rock formation that forms a harbour and protects them from the ravages of the sea, and that is called the Penis Rock. And you're getting an idea here that there's going to be a lot of plays on words.
Excellent. I can't wait to read this. This sounds better by the minute.
So it's a bit of fun, but actually, I hope it's one of these things that you can read it and just enjoy it, or you can start to peel back some of the layers, and a lot of the things that are in it are based on experiences, and they've been put into sometimes a ridiculous situation, but it's like, well, no, actually, that did happen. It may not have happened here, but it's happened somewhere that I've been. And even the bit that someone, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but people say, oh no, there can't be any places like that around. And actually said, well, yes, we actually went to visit friends in a inland town. I have to say it wasn't Compita, a bit more inland than Compita.
Yeah. And
we experienced this. They go, no way. Yep, we experienced this. And they go, oh my God. So, it's really a mishmash of experiences. Politicians all over the world can be a bit stupid. And I have said in the dedication that apparently Napoleon said that being stupid is not a disadvantage in politics.
Exactly. I was just thinking, actually, when I wrote my notes, with all of this taking the mickey out of politicians, you should get someone like Armando Iannucci to produce the film script for it, because he can be vicious like that.
Yes, yeah. So I'm 3/4 way through the sequel to it already, and it will eventually be available via Amazon. But I'm also going to be doing some launches locally, and if people invite me to launch it in other areas, I probably will be quite happy to do that.
That might be good round here, actually. That would.
Yeah. We can certainly talk about it.
Great stuff. And not all of your books are political satire, are they?
No. The first two books are. I would probably, if I had to define them, they're probably what you would call magical realism. They're very different. The second book is actually the prequel to the first book. The third one is still a work in progress, but they're a lot more serious in the content. But yeah, this has just been fun to write, and I haven't made them too long. The first two novels are like 400 pages, which you need to be a reader to get into these. I've deliberately set my target for these books at around 200 pages, which even for a person that's not a great reader, it's still kind of doable,
Is that the length that a novel has to be? Is it a certain number of words?
Well, yeah, it's about 60,000 words. I think that's a good length. It's a kind of I don't know, airport read sort of thing, that you can stick it in your pocket and read it on the plane over and on the beach afterwards if you're not a fast reader.
Brilliant. What's the title of it?
The title of it is Peanuts Don't Grow on Trees.
Is that a reference to penis?
No.
Because it sounds like it. No. Peanuts
don't grow on trees. Yeah, it's the subtitle is Climate Emergency in Paradise. And I'm actually taking the mickey a little bit out of how councils have declared a climate emergency. And once they've done that, they don't know what to do about it. And they do sometimes ridiculous things like let's to help the climate emergency, let's ban smoking on the beach. or let's stick some solar panels on the bus stops. And it's like, if this is an emergency, shouldn't we be treating it with a bit more seriousness? And if it's not an emergency, why are we just virtue signaling by saying we've got a climate emergency and we recognize it here? So I'm kind of taking the mickey a little bit out of some of these things as well.
That's great. It's your own way of protesting.
Yeah. As I say, it's been a bit cathartic after 4 years behind the scenes in politics, and very enjoyable to write. So I hope it's going to be enjoyable to read.
Brilliant. I can't wait. Now, do we have any more questions on the live chat? I'm going to round the show up in a little while. So there is a time delay, of course, on the live chat. So while we're waiting for that to happen, if you have any more questions, by the way, after this, and you don't get a chance to ask on the live chat, then do put them in the comments on YouTube. Don't put them in the comments on the Facebook group that you found the link to this show, and because if you comment on there, then it'll probably only be you and me that see the comments. Put them under the video on YouTube, and then people will all read it who watch the video, hopefully. And that's brilliant. We haven't seen any questions come through. Is there anything else you want to tell us, Bill, before we go?
No, I'm just saying that John lives in Mauchline. Near Robbie Burns country. Beautiful part of the country, but cold. Ayrshire is a cold place.
Used to go to Ayrshire as a child. I think we'd go to, there were things called Christian Endeavour holiday homes that my father and grandfather they were involved in the church organist and everything. And there was one in Troon where we used to go, right on the border there, right by the golf courses. Chilly, very chilly.
It is chilly, yeah. And I have a friend that grew up in Ayrshire, and I think when he moved away, he said, "I'm never going back to Ayrshire." He said, "It's too cold."
Although actually I used to get sunburn on the beaches when we were there on days when the sun comes out. I think it's because maybe you're just nearer to heaven up there, and then you get hit by the rays and burn quicker. Don't know. I like how he's misspelt Robbie Burns to Rabble Burns. That's quite a good name for a character, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to. I might use that one. If it's not copyrighted.
You go for it. I might do it myself if I know. There you go. So, that is the end of the questions. Nobody else has got any more. That is a shame. I've had such a fantastic time
with
you.
It's been really nice talking to you, Skatz. And can I just say, and I mean this sincerely, you have done so many really useful, informative videos on so many topics. And I just want to say, well done. I do some stuff on YouTube, not in the way that you do. I'm not really as proficient as you are in all these things, but I know, I recognize how much work has to go in to produce some of these things that you produce. And I have to say to you, well done. Absolutely excellent, informative channel.
Thank you so much. It's good to be appreciated, isn't it? Well, very soon I'm going to tell you all what's on the show next week, next Saturday. But before that, let's say a huge thank you and give a big virtual hug and a kiss to Bill for being such a great guest.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Bye for now.
Bye now.
There we go. So let's talk about what's on next Saturday's show. We've not had Chris on for a while. He's in the UK. He was going to be on today, but he's not been to all of the consulates yet, and he was going to report live from the consulates and find out, the new BLS centres where you can get your visas. He was going to be talking there, but he's not gone to the London one yet, and we want to make sure that we hear from London and if there are any different processes. He wants to check out what it's like for you to get your visa, which is something that companies here who help people to get their visas don't often appreciate. So once he's done that, he'll be back. So it's going to be another 2 weeks before we see him, and that will be 3 shows in a row then. So he's going to have in-depth reports on visas and residency. But next week, though, I'm talking to Fran the lawyer. Now, we had Francesco. I can't remember his real name now. Francisco, I think. He's back on for his second appearance on this show. He was brilliant last time. And this time, as I mentioned earlier, he's going to be talking about inheritance and wills. I'm told that people are dying to hear about that subject. Ha ha, pun intended. So I was going to have a second guest on who was going to be talking about funeral plans, but we had some technical issues with her link to this platform that I broadcast on. So we're going to put that on for a later show, I think. So it's a dark subject we're going to be talking about, but it's something that we all have to face up to and we all have to be prepared for. So ask your questions in advance. Bev says, boom, boom. There we go. Yes, ask your questions in advance on our Facebook group, YouTooSpain Facebook community, or YouTooSpain Facebook page. There are two different ones. Join up to both of them. One is a private group. Yes, the Facebook community is the private one, and the Facebook page is the public one, so anybody can join in with that one, and there are fewer limitations on what you can do and what you can say. I keep a close eye on the Facebook group to see what's going on there. So thank you very much. John says, I've got love in my eyes today. I've always got love in my eyes, John, for you and all of the guests. But yes, I do have an extra little bit today. So thank you so much, everybody on the chat. Kev the Argonaut, John McClue, Bev, Heather Patrick, and I've not said hello to Barry from Unitech. He's been listening while working. Hello. He lived for less than a year in Alcudia back in the 1980s. Everyone I knew, even the Spaniards, spoke English. There we go. Thanks. You had lots of questions, John, then. Is it because the guest was Scottish? You just had a lot more to say there, a lot more to ask. It's lovely to see. So, thank you to everybody who's watching the video afterwards as well and leaving comments. So, everybody hit the like button if you haven't already. If you have, then don't hit it again because it just removes the like. And anybody who's bought me a coffee, if you haven't bought me a coffee yet, give it a try. Hit that donate button, which is in the video description below, or use the QR code. It's up there somewhere in the corner. So I'll see you on the latest helpful video on Wednesday evening. They're all coming out 5 o'clock Spanish time, Wednesday evenings. They've been getting shorter recently. I've been cutting them down to more or less like 5 minutes or even shorter, and narrowing down the subject matter, because I think more of you will watch that, and we'll get more likes that way, which helps the videos be watched by more people because they go up in the ratings. That's what it's all about. That's what I think about in my life here. So after that, what's that? John McClue says summer, morning or afternoon. Ah yes, we're talking about summer in Scotland. I'll see you next Saturday morning live at our regular time of 9 o'clock if you're in the UK or Ireland or the Channel Islands, or 10 o'clock if you're in Spain or Central Europe. So that's all for this week. Someone pass around the politics cookies, and peace and love to you all. Here's one final message from all of us here, all of my alter egos. There's only me. And here we go. See you all next time. Bye for now. Bye, lads. Bye. Goodbye. Toodaloo. Peace and love. Peas and fluff. Oi, oi. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. One more cosmic dance? All right, then. Look, Mum, I'm dancing. Oh, I'm all a quiver. Let's dance.